Although the first phase is called problem recognition, an actual problem may not be fully apparent or it may not be the obvious driver for the client. Okay? Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So maybe it's a proactive move in order to be able to gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace. I'm just using that as an example. Although on the surface this is a proactive move and it's not an obvious problem, so it's not like an obvious issue that they have to solve. The fundamental problem or reason why they're doing this is to avoid having their competitors stealing their business. The point out of all this is don't get wrapped up on the term problem. Just recognize that there's something that they need to solve either proactively or reactively. Now, at this point, the client has a few more steps that they need to go through before they make a decision. Now, if you as a sales rep or a salesperson, you're engaging with them at this point, recognize that they are simply looking to begin gathering information and that ultimately what they're trying to do is in many ways just try to fully understand the problem themselves. Now, this stage is a fantastic time for you to become a trusted advisor and to begin to engage with them and also to begin giving them insights that they may not have considered or even thought about. From a sales perspective, it's a fantastic position to be in during this phase because you have the opportunity to affect what decision criteria they'll be using later on when they make their final decision. You can ask questions to get the clients thinking about why they need certain features or functionality within the solution that they choose. Proper questions can set you apart. It can set you apart from your competitors in many different ways. It can set you up as a trusted advisor. It could allow you to be able to create new opportunity, what have you. So let me give you an example. Let's just use the example of a client who has a slow website. They want a better performing website. So, here's a few different questions that you may be able to ask that will allow you to be able to uncover some additional information. So let's go with this one first question. Did something specific happen that made you realize that the website was not where you needed it to be? So think about that question. That question allows you to uncover what's important to them. For example, they may turn around and say, yeah, we've lost a bunch of sales or we've had some clients complaining about the website. Okay. So you know what? Client perception or obviously revenue are the key motivators for them or things that are important to them. So again, another tidbit of information that you want to bank away. Here's another question. It's been our experience that many of our clients measure performance just a little bit different. So when you say that you want a better performing website, do you mean actual page load times, or are you talking about access to back-end database information, or are you talking about the ability to convert visitors into clients? So this question is fantastic because not only does it demonstrate that you know what you're talking about and you can start to position yourself as a trusted advisor, it can also open up new opportunities for you, as well as lay potential landmines for your competitors. So for example, if your company sells consulting services on how to use websites to convert visitors to clients, and your competitors don't offer anything like that, you know what? You now laid a landmine for your competitors. You've laid something there where basically they can't compete with you on some of these things. Last question. Throughout the research that you've done so far, what are some of the areas where you feel that the useful information has been a bit light? Now, for example, that question is a great question to begin becoming a trusted resource or a resource for the client. So they're going to tell you what they're missing out on. What a great opportunity for you to now help them get the information that they need in those particular areas. So from a next step perspective, some of the things that you can do is to send them some specific and targeted information based upon what they're looking for. Maybe even point them towards a valuable website or even bring in an expert that you may have on your team in order to be able to help them give more insights, information, and also to even help them truly articulate the problem, okay, and the impact on what it means to them. Now, when the client moves into the information gathering phase, often it's something that they'll do a little bit more on their own. Okay, and what I mean by that is the fact that, although they're gathering information on possible solutions to the problems, in many ways they're still gathering some information on truly understanding the problem themselves and understanding what it could potentially mean to them. So this is why in this stage, things like white papers, client case studies, articles, or even infographics are extremely useful. Used to be way back when that when a client hit this phase, they call in some sales reps from different companies and speak with the sales reps in order to be able to gather the information. This is where the world of sales has changed the most, and that most clients are much more informed. They have a wealth of information that they can easily tap into on the internet through different websites, blogs, forums, what have you. Unfortunately, this is more the time when both you and I are hoping that ultimately the marketing team has done their job. Okay, so I don't know how else to put it. Hopefully the marketing team has done their job. And as I go through that search process or the information gathering process, some of our solutions are popping up, and things like positive reviews are popping up so that we can start to be engaged into the process. Now, having said this, you will still find clients who basically are at this phase and they're reaching out. Maybe they're downloading a white paper from your website. Often when you engage with them around that, they'll be very upfront in the fact that they're just looking for information, or you know what, we're just starting to look around at a solution. However, you have to remember that they've contacted you or they've looked to really gather this information for a reason. So your best approach at this phase is not to push too hard. However, again, to position yourself as a resource that they can go to in order to be able to get more information. If you encounter this, then it's best not to only point them towards your own information like white paper, specification sheets, flyers, what have you, but also point them towards blogs and other what I call neutral sources of information where you know that they're going to get, favored information towards you, or at least on an even playing field as it relates to information. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Let's pretend that you offer marketing services and the client has a problem articulating how they're unique within the industry. Maybe point them towards a book or a blog by Seth Godin. You know that this is a safe blog and that it's not being run by one of your competitors. However, it's a great resource for them to learn more and gather information. As one final note on this stuff, although their goal is to get information, the ability to send them relevant information that is helpful is the power that's on our side as salespeople. Okay, what do I mean by that? If the client states that they're just looking for information and asks you to just send me some information, ask them to be a bit more specific as to the types of information that they're looking for so that you can send them relevant and information that's truly going to help them. We as salespeople have the right in order to be able to ask that. And in many ways, it's our obligation to ask that so that we're not just sending out information for the sake of sending out information. But by doing this, it also creates the opportunity to maybe get the client talking and hopefully open up the opportunity to ask more questions. The evaluation of options phase is exactly what the title says. They're evaluating their options. The client has gathered a bunch of information and now they feel they're in a position to begin shortlisting their options so that they can begin to even evaluate them even more. Now, it's important to remember that the options that they're evaluating may not just be to purchase a solution. They may be looking at changing some internal processes or making changes to their business or how they do business, as well as options. So we need to keep this in mind so that we're not getting into the game of comparing the famous apple to the ever popular orange. And so you're not trying to compete with something that may not cost them anything, but it may mean a restructuring within the company in order to be able to allow them to be able to accomplish what they need to do. But in many ways, that is an option for them. And it's something that you need to also view as potential competition to you being able to close that deal. Now, if you're coming to the dance at this point, you need to recognize that you're a little bit behind, okay? Although the client may not admit it, at this stage, they may have sort of a preferred solution in mind that they're using as a central one that they're comparing other options to. So the key to success in this stage is to try to uncover the information, but also to get crystal clear on what their decision process looks like and how they are evaluating each of their options. If you can ask questions such as, when looking at your options, what are the top 3 capabilities you feel are absolutely necessary to be included in the solution that you ultimately choose? These types of questions will go a long way to help you uncover what criteria they're using to weigh out their options. Questions to understand the process, like what is the exact process that you and your team are going to go through to determine the solution that's best for you? That question is one that can help you to not only identify the process, but also help you to identify the other people or stakeholders that are involved in the evaluation of the options or the evaluation process. So we're going to talk a bit more about stakeholders in another lecture. However, if you're not already engaged with the other people that they mentioned if based upon the information that you get back from them, you know what, you need to get going. Okay, you need to get engaged with them sooner rather than later. The concern risk resolution phase is one that many B2B reps miss or overlook. Now, I know you'd never do that, now would you? Okay. But seriously, if you're already engaged with a client at this point, you can really shine and set yourself apart from your competitors at this phase. Now, if you've not been part of the process up to this point, then again, you're a bit more behind and maybe just a little bit late to the game. You'll have a tough time kind of steering the deal your way at this point. However, it's not impossible and it can be done. The key to this phase, again, is to ask questions. If you're late to the game, try to find out as much information as you can regarding the options that they are already considering. Now, a saying I always have is that you will never change anyone's mind. You'll never change anybody's mind. However, you can give them data or the information which will allow them to be able to look at a situation a little bit differently. Ask questions that may allow you to be able to allow them to be able to see an angle that they may not have already thought about. And this can actually open up the doors for you to come to the table and to be part of the overall process. Now, assuming that you've been working with the client all throughout the process, your focus at this point is to ask questions to uncover any risks or concerns that they may have or that they feel that they need to resolve. Okay, so you're starting to look forward into the process. Often the best questions are the direct ones. Okay, so for example, at this stage in the game, what are some of the concerns or risks that you and your team feel need to be addressed before moving forward? Ask the direct question. Or, before you give this project the green light, has there been any red or yellow flags raised by anyone on the team? Recognize that in this phase, there are a number of different types of risks and concerns that could be present. Maybe they're political concerns, internal concerns, and they're nervous about working with maybe they're, concerned about working with a small vendor on such a large project. Maybe they're concerned that they do not have enough budget to cover the full implementation. You know what? Or maybe they're even concerned about affecting the productivity of their team during the rollout of the solution. Unfortunately, there's not one or two common risks or concerns. So it's our job at this point to ask questions to uncover those risks and those concerns and do everything that we can to solve them. One of the key things that you can do at this point is to give client references and proactively having similar client that's already went through this process. And when I say similar, maybe similar size, similar requirements, what have you, call them. And if they're a good reference point for you, have that client call this client and talk to them about what they went through. That can go a long, long way in this phase. So now the client is ready to make a decision. In this phase, you'll have the final negotiations with the preferred vendor and you'll have other administrative departments like legal, procurement. They may be involved, okay? As an outsider, it's extremely difficult to change a direction at this point. Now, if you're the preferred vendor, then you've done a great job to get to this point. Now, one note is that when it comes to negotiations, price will most likely play a part into the discussion. In my opinion, based upon where you are in this process, you should not have to negotiate too much on price. As you know what, they've already fully articulated to you their problem. You've researched the options, and ultimately, they've decided upon your solution as the one that they want to go with because it meets their needs and gives them the greatest amount of value. So just keep this in mind that unless you've just engaged with the client at this phase and you're looking to do a Hail Mary in order to be able to try and win the business, huge discounts should not be the main point of negotiation. Our job at this point as salespeople is just to get the necessary paperwork done, to be finalizing the implementation and installation details, and to be managing the necessary internal resources that we need in order to be able to get the deal moving and start to get it rolled out. Having said this, let's not forget the next step in the process and begin to be prepared for it, as this is extremely powerful. I can't stress enough that, this is ultimately where you can ultimately win or lose a client for life. Purchase evaluation. You know what? I think this is something that we can all relate to at some point in our life, okay, quite easily. So let's just walk through a scenario. Let's say you just bought a new car. Once you've signed the paperwork for that car, your perception has changed. You're now a client. You're now a customer. So your mindset has changed. You're now anxious to be able to pick up the new car. When you pick it up, you expect that car to be washed and full of gas, don't you? When you walk into that dealership, you want to be treated with a smile. You want some special effort, being put on you the next time you walk through those doors into that dealership. Okay? Because you're now a client, you're now a customer. Now let's say you picked up the car and a few days later you have a problem with the car. No big deal. These things can be expected. It's a brand new car. However, what you're evaluating at this point is how you're treated and how the dealership addresses the problem. So that's ultimately what your decision criteria is going to be based upon. So think about that. Now, let's say they handle it very well and all of a sudden there's a second issue with the car. Okay, hold on now. Okay, now we've got some things that we need to deal with. Our B2B clients go through the exact same process, even if it's a multi-million-dollar project. They expect it to go well. And if it does not go well, then it's ultimately how we handle the situation that goes a long way for them to determine if they'll ever do business with us again or not. If there are more than a few issues, then they begin to reevaluate the purchase as a whole. And you know what? This is where things can spin out of control very quickly and things can get ugly. We both know that issues happen. Things happen. Life gets in the way. So the key to success in this phase is to be sure that you're over communicating with the client and that you take care of the issues quickly and effectively as you possibly can. You know what? Listen, I know as a salesperson, we're not often paid for this activity. However, I cannot stress enough that this is when you can either land a client for life, okay, or a contact that you can go to for life, no matter what company you're at, or you create a contact where, you know what, you may not be able to ever call them again. Assuming everything goes off without a hitch during the implementation, this is also the sweet spot for you to ask the client for referrals or a testimonial or even a reference that you can use as part of your selling strategy moving forward. Again, your best strategy at this point is to over-communicate. Take ownership for anything that goes wrong. Own the problem. And work hard to get it solved as best as you can. And I can guarantee you that if you do that, you'll have a business contact that you can call upon forever, no matter where you are or who you work for. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so now let's relate this to the sales meeting worksheet that we've been reviewing, and we're going to be reviewing a bit later on in the course, and really the main document for the course. Now, first off, I want to highlight these phases. I didn't list them on the worksheet. The main reason for this is the worksheet is to be used for many different types of meetings. So for example, we're going to talk about the different types of meetings, but maybe it's an initial call or maybe it's a social call. But ultimately, after you've had that initial conversation with the client, you're most likely going to know what phase they're in and where they are within that cycle. So it's not a data point that necessarily needs to be tracked for each sales call or each sales meeting that you have with the client. Having said that, it is extremely important to recognize what stage they're at when it comes to planning your strategy, the questions, or even the action items that you want the client to take when you meet with them. So this is a key item to always be aware of, and one of the reasons why I wanted to include it is one of the lectures within this course, because to me it's a very, very important item for the success of any type of B2B sales call. Knowing and recognizing each one of these stages can help you to not only really avoid the pitfalls, but it can also help you to be much more in control of the sales process.